So, welcome to Kisslegg, and we'll just have a little talk tonight because people have travelled a long way. Just to say that this is about something that's very simple. It's about the realisation that already all there is this. This is the whole. This is wholeness. It's complete already. There isn't anything else that's needed. So we won't be looking for something else. We won't be searching for a state of stillness or for silence or for self-inquiry about finding our own true nature or any of those sort of ideas that are often put out as though there is somewhere to go from here and look for something else. What's being communicated here is that there is no way to look for this, because already all there is this. So there won't be any meditation, there won't be anything that's formalised at all. In fact, there isn't anything on offer for the seeker. This is one of the few meetings you'll go to in the world which, for the individual, is completely and utterly pointless. There's nothing for the individual in this communication at all. And really, you could say that what will emerge is that what is being sought is unknowable. It can't be known. So it can't be found. It can't be grasped. It can't be possessed. There isn't something that can move towards it. There isn't something that can approach that which is already everything. So we can talk together and share ideas together, and that's what this is. This is not a teaching of any sort at all. There's no teaching here of any kind. There's nothing prescribed. And what's being talked about from this thing here, this magnificent body that stands in front of you, has nothing, this message has nothing to do with this thing here. It's not anyone's message, it's just the message. It's just a communication out of nothing, to nothing, pointing to the reality that all there is this wholeness. So we can share together this perception, let's say, and look at it from all sorts of different ways. And obviously, whatever goes on for you, just share it. And somehow what happens is that in some way or other, at that level of talking together, there can be a sort of clarity that can arise about this. But clarity isn't liberation. Essentially, the dynamic of this message, the real dynamic of this message, is that it's completely uncompromising. And it's completely and utterly impersonal. So, in some way or other, the seeker is starved. Actually, there's a sort of starvation that goes on with the seeker. The seeker's always saying, yes, but what about my true nature, or what about my stillness and that? But somewhere that whole idea that there's something the seeker can hold of is simply starved. And the dynamic of that is that the seeker can't get anywhere with anything here. There's nothing for sale for the seeker. And in some way or other, energetically, something else seems to arise. The other thing is that it seems that in some way or other, separation is an apparently contracted energy. When separation begins and the child goes into a separate individual, it contracts into a sort of fearsome place of its own. I mean, that sounds very dramatic, but there's a lot of contracted energy in being separate, and there's a lot of hard work in being separate too, because it's hard work to be an individual in the world. But there is a sort of sense of being in here. When I was a person, it felt as though I lived in this skin. I definitely was in here. Tony Parsons, the person, the separate person, was in this skin, and everything else was outside this skin. So whenever this looked at a tree, the tree was over there and was separate, and people were separate. He's separate to me, I'm over here, I'm something here, and he's something over there. So there was a feeling of being in something, seeing the world from inside. And so that's, for me, I would term as a sort of contracted energy. As far as I understand, all there is energy, by the way. There's no God, there's nothing out there running this, there's just energy, there's just life, there's just beingness. It's completely wild. It's mad. It's just energy in any form. So one of the forms it takes is it pretends to be a contracted energy. It appears as a contracted energy. It appears as that. So in some way or other, what seems to happen is that that sense of being contracted somehow melts when there's an openness like this. Somehow melts in that openness. Nobody does it, but it seems to melt and dispel into boundlessness, into the boundlessness which is unconditional freedom. So we can talk together, but really in a way that's only an opening to something else happening. It's you could almost say talking together is an excuse for something else to happen. Apparently. Do we have to?
We have to switch it on.
Oh, we have to switch it on. Yes, there's a switch.
So the only thing that the individual can do is search, isn't it? Everything that the individual does is a search.
Absolutely. The nature of the individual is, it's an inconstant state. The separate person or the individual is an inconstant state. But it lives in a story. It only lives in a story. And it only exists in time. If there's no individual, there's no story, there's no time. So the individual can only exist in a story. And so in the story, it can only search for home, for that which isn't a story. That's all it can do. Because although it doesn't necessarily know it, it longs to be in infinity at home. It longs to be at home. Though it's apart from home, it longs to be at home. And it tries to satisfy itself with money and lovers and all those other. And then it eventually decides that it's going to become enlightened, because that might be the answer. So, but it still rushes around in a circle, looking for something. And why enlightenment or liberation doesn't happen is because the individual is looking for it. It's searching for it. It wants to know what enlightenment is, and it can never know that. That's the irony of being imprisoned to the individual. So everything it does is utterly and completely futile.
So when there's no more search, then the individual's gone.
Well, in a way you could say that, but this message is not saying don't search.
Right.
It's not obviously saying stop searching, because that's another form of search. But in some strange way, well, strange, in some way or other, essentially that energy just collapses, and there is that which was longed for, but for no one. No one ever becomes liberated. So it isn't that the individual gives up and then suddenly gets the prize. This is about the death of individuality. Essentially, it's about the death of individuality. And then suddenly that collapses, and there is that which is everything. There's nothing left. And when there's nothing left, then there's everything. When there's nothing left, then there's absolute love. All the time there's something looking for absolute love, it's just beyond that which is there.
Tony, then who is this that is laughing there and
Sorry?
talking there?
Yeah. Well, it's not serious. This isn't serious.
No, but I just wonder, who is this?
Oh, it is no one. It's joy. It's
Yeah.
nothing laughing.
Yeah.
That's nothing asking, who's this? That's nothing pretending to be something, asking, who is this? And this is nothing saying to that, nothing. You're pretending to be something. You don't have to anymore. It's all over. Laughter happens, crying happens, everything happens as life. It doesn't need a person for there to be love, or crying, or flinching. It's amazing. Life goes on, but the individual puts a little flag in the top called me. This is happening to me.
How to get out of it?
No, you never do. You never do. The me never gets out.
From this little flag.
Well, you could take the flag and throw it away, but it would still be you doing it.
Yeah.
I'm taking the flag up and throwing it away.
Yeah. Now I can see there's a screen where everything is happening, and I keep getting into this screen like in a virtual reality. I can see how I keep getting hooked in it and putting etiquettes on all that is happening. But how to get out of it?
No.
And
I mean, the strange thing is, of course, the other thing is that you're not in it. There isn't anything in it. There isn't a screen. It's a total illusion. So that the apparent individual, and the word apparent will come up a lot because it's all apparent, it's all nothing appearing as. So the seeker is nothing appearing as a seeker, looking for nothing. The apparent seeker feels as though they are real and they're in a prison. And it is that illusion that falls away. Not that they will be free from the prison, but they never were in one, and there wasn't a prison. There's no one in there, and there's no prison. All there is this. And the freedom is constantly speaking to you. At this moment, the only thing that's speaking to everyone in this room is freedom. Everything that's happening to you is freedom saying, I'm here already. I'm here. I never left. It's in what is. You're sitting on it. You're sitting on what you're looking for. It never left you. It's amazing. It is impossible. It's not difficult. It's not difficult. It's impossible.
Nobody, and suppose it is nobody.
No.
I can't grasp it.
No. And the attempt to grasp it goes on reinforcing the sense of you not being able to get it.
Say it again.
The individual's attempt to grasp it goes on reinforcing the sense that you can't grasp it, the loss. It just goes on reinforcing the sense that there's someone there who's lost something. So any attempt to grasp it is just a strengthening of the apparent reality that it is not graspable. It can't be had.
Is the illusion obvious from that perspective?
When it speaks and confirms, it isn't obvious in terms of seeing anyone, because as far as this is concerned, there's no one in this room. I can't see anybody. I can't see any person. Where's the person? But a body might pretend, I'm a person. I'm a person. You know, that then there's something that responds to that. Nothing, of course. But there is no actual person in this room. There can be a sense of a contracted energy. There can be something about an energy that is contracted. There isn't anyone here. This is life. This is just life happening.
I meant from that perspective.
Well, there isn't anything here that has perspective, but from this,
It's obvious.
yeah. There isn't a thing that has a perspective, but from this perspective, you could say. From the perspective of nothing, there is no one, of course. think it's on all the time, actually.
No.
Oh no, it's not on. Is this switch that stays on? Can it stay on?
It is.
It can stay on, you don't have to turn it.
I only didn't have my glasses on.
Oh, right.
If you, I don't want to get dialectic, but if you say that exchanging viewpoints is an excuse for something else to happen, isn't that a kind of purpose?
Well, no, there is no purpose. Wholeness or oneness or nothing doesn't want anybody to become enlightened because there isn't anybody that isn't. There's nothing, there's no intention. Nothing doesn't have any intention. But what we're talking about is two realities here, really. We're talking about the natural reality, which is unknowable, and the separate reality. In the separate reality, there is language and an apparent story. What's really happening here is a divesting of that story from the point of view of no thing. No thing is saying the story is just an appearance. It has no significance. There is no purpose to the story. There's no purpose to this. It just is what it is. And that's, it's unknowable. It can't be concluded. There can't be a conclusion about what's going on. Let's put it another way. All the time there's an individual, there seems to be, I hope there's a purpose, you know, there seems to be a purpose. Even in coming here and listening to this, there seems to be a sort of direction or purpose. But when the individual collapses, that is seen as a complete illusion. There never was a purpose. There never was a process. All there is this, which is purposeless. This doesn't need anything to be this. It just is. This just is. It's not, you know, it doesn't need anything. To be is. Look, it just is. What does it need? It's complete. It doesn't want you to be enlightened or to see it in another way. It just is already. It's only the individual mind that works in that sort of linear way. There's some way to go to. There's always some way to go to. The seeker lives in what will be, or what could be, and never in what is. So in a way you could say this message is pointing to the natural reality that there is no will be.
Now the mind starts making concepts out of this, what you're just talking about. You understand? It's like you say there is no will be, and here my ego or my mind or my person or whatever it is goes on making a concept out of that, making another religion, making another prayer or whatever. There is no,
it can't stop.
Nowhere to go.
It daren't stop. It daren't stop because it means it would not be on the throne anymore.
I'm sitting here and trying to integrate this whole spiel into this difficult person. Yeah. So I can go on.
Yeah, you can continue.
Yeah.
You won't die.
Mm-hmm.
If you hold on to something you can see. Seeking is the most effective way to avoid liberation, to avoid death. It is, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, come on, we want to hear what it's worked out. We want to hear the plan. So has it worked out that if there isn't a what will be, then I have to be in what is, which is a bit like being here now. Of course it's not at all. But yeah.
Can I be here now?
Sorry?
Can I be here now?
No, of course not. Well, you could tend to be, yes. Well, according to some teachers, you absolutely can be. You can learn how to be here now, which is another formula for life. And you could be here now for up to even a minute, probably. And it's quite pleasant, it's nice, you know. I must do that tomorrow. Tomorrow I'm going to be here now. Live in the moment. Live this life. Live this day as though it's the last day of your life. Another wonderful idea.
Tony, could you please talk a little bit more about protecting the body-mind because it wouldn't be able to withstand the energy at first?
Well, there's nothing that does that. There can be, we find that with people, and it was the same with Claire and I, that there was something that happened before liberation, apparently. But this is only another story in a sense. And that is what's called awakening, which is like a glimpse or satori, which doesn't happen to anyone. There's someone, and then there's nothing, and there's someone that comes out of the other side of nothing, and goes on seeking. And you could say that the liberation is like a collapse of some energy. It's like an explosion, and in some way or other, maybe, and it's a very appealing idea, that this seeker is sort of is sort of gently taken into the final death. It would seem that might be possible, but it's only apparent. And it doesn't matter again, because in the end it's not a process. It only seems to be one. But there are people, or there aren't people obviously, but there are. This can happen instantly, the whole thing. It doesn't need awakening. It can just be all over. So you can't, there aren't any rules. Apparently.
does it happen so rarely?
Well, it doesn't. It's happening a great deal. I think we have to be careful about this because in traditional teachings, enlightenment seems to be rare because, of course, the teacher is attempting to get the student to become personally enlightened. And as that is an impossibility, that's why it's very rare, that actually by accident the person suddenly vanishes and enlightenment happens. In this communication, liberation has always been happening. It's just that it hasn't been broadcast because don't forget this message has always been, although it's always been in the apparent history of seeking, this message has always been communicated. It's always been very hidden because it's only available when there's a readiness to hear it. So it's always been a hidden message, whereas the traditional teaching message has always been well broadcast all over, everywhere. So what traditionally is seen as enlightenment seems very rare, whereas this is very ordinary. This is about something that's very ordinary and wouldn't be announced to the world. You don't get pure liberation. You don't get somebody going to somebody else and saying, "I'm liberated," because obviously they're not. And so this phenomena isn't broadcast. It's happening all over. You know, people don't have to come to these meetings for this to happen. They can be out in the field or posting the post up the road or baking bread, and this happens. It's very natural. Suddenly the whole sense of there being an individual falls away. So this is happening all over the place. The other thing about it is that because the psyche in the world, in the apparent story of people, because the psyche of people is changing, then suddenly this message is becoming more well known and broadcast. This wouldn't have happened 40 years ago.
It's very difficult to understand, but
Yeah.
well, I just see 70 people sitting here thinking that here in this room are 70 people and only no one knowing that there's no one in this room. One person that knows that he's not a person and thinking, knowing that's not the person in this room. And 70 others, they know they are 70 people.
Okay, so let's be clear about one thing. Liberation isn't knowing that you aren't someone. Liberation is not someone knowing that they aren't a someone anymore. It's a complete collapse of any knowing. After liberation, there is nothing that knows. There is nothing that's aware that it's at one with everything. There is nothing left but what's happening. We can talk about that a lot more during the next few days because it's, to the ordinary individual, it would sound strange that life would go on without them. It's a wonderful, the individual has the most wonderful arrogance that somehow life couldn't go on without me. It's gorgeous stuff. But the reality is that in liberation there isn't somebody who knows they're liberated. It's the end of that which knows. So in traditional terms, those that know they're enlightened aren't, as far as this is concerned, are obviously not, because they think they know they are. Does that help?
Yes, this does help a little bit. Yeah.
And afterwards, there is no coming back?
Well, there never was anybody there in the first place.
Yeah.
How could there be anything coming back when there wasn't anyone? You know, this is simply the sudden collapse of an illusion. It's the end of something, listen, it's the end of something that was never happening. So there isn't anything left. So how could anything come back if all that there is everything?
But this collapse, I mean, it's a small collapse, it's a big collapse.
Oh, it's about that. It's about that. It's the collapse of the illusion that there was something that was separate. being an individual is being separate. So it's the collapse of the illusion that there was someone who was separate. So it's pretty big.
And after you go on and
No, you don't go on. There's no one left. There's no one left. All there is what's happening. There isn't anyone that anything's happening to. Let's presume there are people in this room, separate individuals, and they are sitting on chairs. And they think they are sitting on chairs. And they think they know they are sitting on a chair. They are aware of sitting on a chair. It's my bum on this chair. It's happening to me. Sitting on a chair is happening to me. It's the collapse of that. Suddenly it's the collapse of that simple thing into there being just sitting on a chair. Apparently. Sorry?
Who polishes your shoes?
On my sleeves. My disciples come. I leave them outside the door. My disciples come and polish them in the night. Well, they don't come. They're actually sitting outside the door.
Just some nobody. You do a nice job.
I have to. If they don't, they give it an extra lifetime to live.
Did you ever polish the shoes of somebody else?
Sorry?
Did you polish the
Yes,
shoes of
I was in the army. I'm younger. I'm old enough to have been in what's called national service in England. You go to in the army for 2 years.
in a spiritual world also?
I know I never polished anybody's shoes in the spiritual world. Okay.
They don't wear shoes in the spiritual world. You didn't have to wear them.
No, I never had a guru. I was in the Osho thing, but I never. Everybody told me I didn't belong there. Really.
Did you wear shoes?
Did I wear shoes?
No, Osho.
I think you did. They were very holy shoes.
I used to have holy shoes.
So you've lowered the level now, you know. We were being deeply esoteric, and now you can talk about his shoes. Well, as Osho used to say, enough for today. Thank you very much. And tomorrow it's 10 o'clock.
Thank you.